I am Games, and these are opinions. The Mega Man franchise has always been famous for its crushing difficulty, standing as a high wall for new players to climb, but keeping hardcore fans rushing back to challenge their long-tested skills against fresh obstacles. In many ways though, the Mega Man games could be seen as having customizable difficulty. While the baseline was always set fairly high, using the right powers at the right time could take a room from being hard as balls to easy as pie, and bosses you were stuck on will be a cakewalk if you had their weakness. Of course, for the hardcore fans, these were typically seen as temporary crutches on the way to learning the game perfectly, so that you could do it without powers and on a single continue. You see, Mega Man takes a bizarre and fascinating approach to the lives system. Typically, you start off with 3 lives, and losing one of them will send you back to checkpoints throughout the levels. However, getting a game over will cause you to start the level from the beginning. New powers obtained will carry between game overs, but your score will be reset, and you'll assumably have used up all your extra lives and energy tanks, and therefore need to go back through the stages to pick up more before facing whatever challenge you're stuck on. This game over system has a twofold purpose: an intense challenge proposed to hardcore players to see how much they can accomplish without losing all their lives, and a punishment telling unskilled players that they need to go back through the levels for more practice before they'll be ready for the challenges ahead. On your way to 1cc'ing the game, using Robot Master powers, gathering energy tanks and extra lives, and playing the levels in the standard sequence can be used for assistance, but none of these are required for completing the game, and so the true Mega Man gods will try to beat it without them. But what of the rest of us? I would argue that it isn't the responsibility of any developer to try and make their game more appealing to casual players, especially when the difficulty is a huge part of a game's brand. And when Mega Man 9 and 10 dropped in 2008 and 2010, after 12 whole years since the previous game, rocking the aesthetics of the NES classics, it seemed like they weren't too concerned about drawing in a fresh, casual audience. Mega Man 11, on the other hand, is sporting clean, brightly colored HD graphics, seemingly designed specifically to spit in the face of the awful visuals of Mighty No. 9, the failure of which likely gave Capcom the platform to try and capitalize on it by surprising fans with a new game that captures the essence of the classics while modernizing the visual and mechanical feel. Fundamentally, Mega Man 11 is no different from its predecessors. The baseline difficulty is very high, but every challenge can be overcome through its basic mechanics and raw player skill, or mitigated through the use of powers and strategic progression. This time though, there's a whole variety of other crutches to get you off the ground. Right from the start, you're granted with the gear powers, which can be used to either raise your buster's power output or to slow down time temporarily for you to get your bearings. Neither of these powers are ever necessary for progression, they are simply there to make things a little bit easier. Far more helpful in that regard is a wide array of items for sale at the in-game shop, purchased via bolts that are collected throughout the levels. Here you can buy no shortage of permanent upgrades, such as one that allows you to move at normal speed while everything else is slowed down by your time control power, or one that makes health drops more common, or another that causes you to be constantly charging your buster at all times. You can also buy extra lives, energy tanks, single-use items that allow you to soak up a death to spikes or pits, and anything else themed around the basic idea of making the game just ever so slightly easier. What's so bizarre to me about this approach to easing the game's difficulty is that not a single one of these powers or items makes the game more fun to play, and in fact most of them kind of feel like cheating, considering that they do nothing but negate death in moments when you know that you fucked up and did a bad job. Even purchasing these items is an unsatisfying pain in the ass, requiring you to grind for them if you happen to burn through all your money and still fail, and forcing you to buy them one by one with several lines of text in between, as if the game is trying to tell you that you're making a boring and bad decision by choosing to obtain these items in a shop instead of out in the fields where they can still be found as they could in the old games. But considering that obtaining these items in stages is usually a more intense challenge than just playing through the stages normally, it's not as though they make the game any easier for new players anyways, and are more like a cushion for advanced players trying to practice their way towards a single continue completion rather than beating it for the first time. Mega Man 11 features 2 difficulty levels below the normal one, which likewise simply make the game all around easier in a linear way. Casual mode gives you more lives, reduces the damage you take while increasing the damage you deal, and has a higher item drop rate and more frequent checkpoints, while beginner mode just coddles you entirely by picking you up out of pits and making enemy damage a pittance. None of this goes any distance whatsoever in mitigating the root problem of why new players have such a difficult time getting into Mega Man. The fact that the game is difficult overall is only half the problem. These days gamers flock to titles like Dark Souls and Super Meat Boy with a fervor that new Mega Man titles aren't so likely to receive, and those games are probably even harder, thinking of it on a challenge for challenge basis. The difference, however, is that Mega Man isn't just hard, it's punishing. Mega Man 11 features longer than usual stages for a 2D platformer, with something like 3 to 5 minutes between checkpoints depending on how fast you can play, but death often comes instantaneously thanks to the frequency of pits and spikes. Moreover, you'll start with only 3 lives with a maximum capacity of 10, and they can't be replenished without leaving a stage and sacrificing your progress therein. Hence, there's a good chance that you'll be getting a whole lot of game overs along the way and losing all of your progress in a stage, and often right at the end too, since they get harder as they go. Falling into a pit and having to redo a couple of screens from the checkpoint is one thing, but losing your last life because you messed up a pixel perfect jump on the last screen before the boss and having to do the whole stage over again is thoroughly demoralizing. If you haven't made it to the boss checkpoint with at least a few lives to spare, you may feel the urge to just throw yourself into a pit and start over, since you'll likely need a few attempts to learn the boss's patterns, and some of those lives will have to be sacrificed to experimentation. And that's where the live system gets especially infuriating. Mega Man 11 does expect you to experiment. It expects you to use different powers in different scenarios, to try and reach platforms that are out of the way, or to figure out what you need to do to get under the boss's legs, and then it punishes you so harshly for failure that experimentation becomes terrifying. Then it asks you to minimize the risk factor not by playing the section over and over until you can get it right, but by stocking up on items that will just let you die a few extra times and utilizing power-ups which straight up trivialize many of the challenges. There isn't enough middle ground with Mega Man 11. The game feels like a frustrated father who can't figure out how to teach his kid how to catch a ball, so he just puts him in full catcher's gear and pelts him with it over and over, hoping he'll get the point eventually. The training wheels are inconsistent as hell though. Slowdown powers will make one challenge into a complete joke, only for the next room to be just as difficult no matter what power-ups you've got helping you. Challenges with unclear solutions might take you half an hour to solve as you work your way back to that point after consecutive rapid failures. I realize that not everyone is necessarily so bad at this game right from the start, nor so resistant to using all the power-ups and items, which I found to be patronizing, not to mention frustrating in their own way when you realize a challenge you struggled to do right would have been done in 3 seconds just by pressing the Make Game Easy button. But let me posit one quick fix that could have completely solved all of this shit without making any of the power-ups and other bullshit necessary. All they had to do was make a version of normal mode with infinite lives. Yes, beginner mode has infinite lives already, but it treats you like a 3-year-old. Slowing down time to trivialize a challenge or having a stupid cartoon bird lift me out of a pit when I fuck up does not make the game any more fun, but not having to repeat the same 10-minute stretch of game 1700 times just in the process of trying to learn one new challenge would make it infinitely less frustrating to power through. Super Meat Boy was able to reach such a wide audience because no matter how controller breakingly hard a screen might be, you were never ever going to lose more than 20 seconds of progress, and the game would load you right back in immediately. Dark Souls might have made you run all the way back to the boss when you died, and yes, losing all your souls could be frustrating, but if you just spent the souls before the boss fight and ran straight there without fighting any enemies, then it was never all that big a deal, and the cooldown time would give you the chance to reflect on what you did wrong and think of a new strategy. You don't need that kind of cooldown time in Mega Man because what you did wrong is probably just pressing the X button half a second later than you were supposed to. Moreover, Dark Souls would give you the same opportunity for success every single time you went out by refilling your Estus Flask upon death, whereas Mega Man puts you in a worse position after each death by lessening your remaining opportunities to finish the level, and then penalizing you by having you repeat the challenges that you already conquered after an arbitrary number of failures on the next section. After playing this game for hours and hours and getting more and more frustrated with it even as I got used to the controls, mastered certain sections of levels, and genuinely had a good time when things were going smoothly, only to game over several times in a row on the last challenge in a stage and lose all motivation to continue, I can say without question that simply replacing this one attribute would have made the difference between me coming away liking this game instead of utterly despising it as I came to. Once again, I don't think it's the responsibility of Capcom or any game developer to make their game easier for an audience who isn't going to resonate with what they see as the core appeal of their product. But in the case of Mega Man 11, it's astonishing how far they went in trying to make things more inviting for that audience while totally failing to make the one simple change that could have negated the necessity of the rest. Moreover, while opinions may vary on this, when a friend of mine who'd beaten all the Zero games and most of the series classics tried his hand at Mega Man 11, he came away feeling that while the game was certainly doable the same way the classics were, it felt more like it was balanced around the idea that players would indeed use the power power-ups and items to make it easier on themselves, though he found the use of them made the game feel cheap and boring just as I did. Your mileage will certainly vary. Whether you think this game was easy or hard, or that power-ups are cool or lame, I doubt many would disagree that live systems in video games are an antiquated mechanic in desperate need of re-evaluation by any long-running series still surviving today, and that simply providing a mode where infinite lives was the only concession made to casual players, as opposed to hand-holding baby modes which patronize them and take away the actual fun of conquering the challenges, would have been a better way to draw them in. Anyways, if you want to watch 12 plus hours of the I Am Games crew and our friends getting our balls rocked at this game, you can find our stream recordings over in the playlists tab, or follow us at twitch.tv/IamGames, where our buddy Ben Saint has promised to come over and make another attempt at beating the Wily stage sometime in the near future. We stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 PM Eastern and Fridays at midnight, and the next game on the docket is a fan remake of the original Halo, which gives it the graphics and weapons of Halo 2, so look forward to that, and remember to be the games you want to see. I Am Games, signing out.